This is the UK Brand Show with Penny Williams and Mark Challoner.
Well, good morning, Penny.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm very, very well, thank you. And hello to everyone joining us from wherever you are in the world.
Yes, welcome to the UK Brand Show.
Yeah, back again for another trip on Zoom. And then we go on to YouTube.
Yes, indeed.
So we are building our new YouTube channel.
We are, yes. And challenging times to be talking about marketing and branding at the moment.
Yes, indeed. Indeed it is. And so what have you been up to in the past week? Anything particularly good or exciting? Have we been in lockdown still?
Still very much in lockdown. I think that I was on a conference call with a group of charity CEOs on Friday, and we were talking about anxiety levels are much higher at the moment within companies, of particularly people that have been working, because I think they're getting quite tired. We've all had to adopt new ways of working, not least using things like Zoom. And I've talked to a lot of people that have found that more tiring, whether it's just a change of what you're using to communicate through a video call. I don't know, but it is taking people's time, and the anxiety levels at work are very much around unlocking. It's interesting. You don't know if you've got it. Groups of your friends some are desperate to get back out to normal life and think we need to just crack on. And then others are more cautious and are sort of saying, well, I'm not going to send my kids to school, and I'm not going to change how I'm working at the moment. And it's interesting, I think I saw a stat to say last week there was only a 4% increase in people going back to work physically, because a lot of people, there's several companies like Google, Facebook, Twitter, they've all said that they don't intend to get their staff to come back into the offices at least until after Christmas, which is,
Wow.
it's interesting, isn't it? Are we all going to change the way we work? Are we going to change what we do? Human beings are very tactile, and at the moment you can't hug people, you can't shake their hand when you meet them, and it's quite weird, actually. I find it a challenge at times when I meet someone new. I sort of elbow bump.
it's very weird, isn't it?
You're in the camp of you want to get back out there, back to business.
Yeah, I want some bars to be open. I want the pubs to be open. I want some restaurants. I want to go to a restaurant and have a meal.
And you're big on gigs, aren't you?
I want to go to a concert again. Yeah, exactly right. But what's funny? I've got various Zoom calls I set up during the week, and one of them is a group of friends of mine from media from various parts of the world, and we all just chip in every Saturday night. From all over, and this Saturday we had people from the likes of Belgium and Norway, and the reason why I mentioned those two countries is because they're both in the same situation, which is probably a week or two ahead of where we're at in terms of bars and restaurants opening, and they had the same experience, which is probably where we're going to be heading. So they're saying that no one's allowed to congregate at the bar. So you can't hang around the bar at all. You've got to have a seat at a table. And of course, all the tables being spread out with sort of 2 meter distances, etc. So there could be a situation where even to go to a pub, you have to book into a place and have a table, and they will serve you. So the waiter or waitress will come to the table with a mask on, and they will serve you your pint of beer, or if you've ordered pub food or whatever, they'll do that for you. And it's very strict, and the businesses are being told to be closed down if they don't observe this rule. So if that's what we're heading for in the next few weeks, it's going to be quite weird, isn't it?
It is.
It's not your pub experience, that's for sure. It's going to feel really walking into. I'm just thinking of little, traditional pubs in town now myself. I'm thinking how that's going to work. It's going to be so weird with about a third of the people in there.
In Amsterdam, they had sort of mini conservatories, glass domes, if you like, that they put outside, so that people could have their sort of social distancing and security, if you like, but not everywhere's got that sort of space. And I think last week, you know, when it was really hot, you think, oh, it'd be great to sit in a pub garden. But now this week, that just wouldn't be an option.
No, it wouldn't, would it? It wouldn't at all. It's
so that's going to be very different. And
it's all so weird.
We're yet to see how many companies are going to survive. You know, I think the furlough scheme is a bit like the lockdown. All it's done is sort of delayed a sort of overwhelming amount of companies all having to close. But I do feel that between once companies have to start paying part of the contribution in August, we are going to see a few more actually fall to the wayside.
Yeah. Well, what you're saying there, of course, touches on what we're going to discuss today on the UK Brand Show. So later, I'm going to go through some slides I've got from, as we mentioned last week, I was at the virtual World Congress for Media, the INMAR conference recently. And one of the speakers was a professor from Reuters Institute in Oxford. And she gave this great presentation about brands generally, nothing necessarily about media. Media is just part of the picture. But any brand, big or small, what you need to be doing in terms of planning for post-COVID as a brand. So I'll go through that later, but dovetailing quite nicely into that, I think you've got some stuff as well, haven't you?
Well, just there's a piece on Marketing Week, because I was just having a look to see, you know, what brands were doing in terms of this sort of change of environment. Last week we talked about how some companies are changing what they produce. You know, local brewer Shepherd Neame are now producing hand sanitizer because there's a lower demand for their beer. And this article just goes through a couple of, 5 sort of brands and what they're doing. And the first one is you know, a massive worldwide iconic brand in Coke. And I hadn't really realised that over the last few years, their strategy has been very much about acquisition. They bought Costa earlier, a few months ago, but they've put all of that on hold because of the current situation, and they're focusing now on actually looking at their online business, because like many other companies, online is the primary way to trade right now. So that's where they're putting their investment now and putting on hold their acquisition trail. And then you've got another example, which is the like many charities, the British Heart Foundation has really suffered. Many charities have suffered with the lack of fundraising because a lot of it is done through events. People are concerned about their jobs, so they may not be donating like they were. And they were saying that they're just now looking at new ways to fundraise, which is primarily online, but there's only so much you can do in terms of fundraising events online. And their sort of marketing strategy now is just to highlight that they still need funds in this tough time, which I've seen a lot of charities do. There's been a sort of increase in advertising, particularly on the TV. That sort of reminders that people are still suffering from cancer. They're still suffering in many ways. You know, the NSPCC child line, which again I find quite sad that, you know, they've seen an increase in the amount of calls, because
it's particularly sad, isn't it, for charities? And you know that well yourself with your involvement in charities. So I work at Kenwood Trust, which is a charity for alcohol and drug addiction, and we've had the same situation, that the fundraising has just sort of dropped off the edge of a cliff, but the demand has gone up. So it's a real tough time for charities. And then we move on. I think the other thing I was going to say on that, Penny, it's not just charities, is it? Because it's you know, I've seen lots of advertising for London Theatre, for example, lots of newspaper advertising saying, please support us when we're back soon. It's like a desperate plea to please don't ignore us and please come and put some bums on seats, the ones that we are able to fill when people go back. And the other thing is, even down to like my local pub here at Canary Wharf here, they've been doing a Facebook page, a fundraising page there, saying, look, you know, we're obviously desperate. They haven't used these words, but we're desperate for money basically to keep alive. We're not open. And, you know, if you'd like to, a lot of people have done this, if you'd like to pay up front now for a voucher for, so 20 quid gets you, you know, 2 pints and a pizza or something, and we pay 100 quid to get blah, 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 blah. And there's a lot of people doing that too. And it's just, you know, we've never seen anything like this before, have we? Hopefully never again.
No, and that leads nicely into the other analysis, which is of Burger King and KFC. It has been interesting to watch how actually the fast food companies have handled this in a very different way. You know, McDonald's were the very last to come back online, which was quite interesting. I don't know if you've seen the KFC TV commercials of people trying to cook. Oh
no, I've seen this.
Oh yeah, they've been trying to cook chicken the way KFC does it, and it's completely failed.
That's good.
And so, you know, they're sort of positioning themselves as this sort of, well, you know, we're back now and you won't have to suffer in the way that you have. Although both Burger King and KFC have focused on the sort of cleanliness of cooking and how they are being very careful with their distribution. Actually, a friend of mine knows a friend who'd gone to China just before the lockdown, and as they started to come out of it, when they picked up their McDonald's, the temperatures of the people that had prepared the food were written on the packaging in a way to try and reassure people that they were, you know, safe, which I thought was fascinating move forwards.
That's like a step forward from, do you remember the, is it Domino's Pizza had this, that they're still doing that, but they had this progress chart to say once you placed your order, you could see online where your pizza was up to. Even down to the name of the person putting it into the box, and it's, you know, it's now 20 minutes in the oven, and it's now doing this. It's now going on the bike, and a transponder on the bike sends you a message, say, "So it's way, it's going to be there," and the bing bong happens. It's and putting a sponsored content around that keeps you engaged for like 25 minutes with the brand, which is really cool. But that's like a step beyond that now, isn't it? Saying this is the temperature of the person putting it in the box.
Yeah. And the other thing you just touched on there, you know, the increase in deliveries. People are, companies are advertising for staff because they just can't keep up with the amount of deliveries that now is part of our culture. That, you know, because we're not out and about, although I think that that's starting to change. I think since Monday, and as more schools go back next week, it'll be interesting to see how much normality we actually go back to. I
heard that the supermarkets don't actually make money on the delivery, even though compared to what was it a year ago, a lot of them were doing it for free, maybe a bit longer, and then they realize it's a massive loss maker for them, so they have to charge, and they're charging in many cases premium for premium delivery slots because so many people want them, but apparently they're still not making money.
That's interesting.
Anyway.
I haven't. Do you know? I haven't gone for home delivery on a supermarket for years now. And when lockdown first happened, I logged onto a few, and like everyone else, it was your number 670,000 and 42
in the queue.
In the queue, it's, you know, pointless.
Well, a little tip for you here, which I've discovered: you can actually do click and collect much easier. I've never done click and collect before until this pandemic, and it's brilliant. So you can just click and collect, you can get a slot. It seems to me, you get one much easier, and the process is quite good as well. If you just drive to the place, to the click and collect thing, you don't have to queue with everybody else. Drive in, they bring the thing to your car, you put it in the back of your car, and off you go.
That makes a lot of sense. And which brand was that with?
Sainsbury's.
Yeah. No, I might have to try that. I've done click and collect at B&Q, and the queue was still quite long.
Well, Sainsbury's have got this huge van set up in their car park, So you just drive to the car park van, which is obvious when you get there. Yeah. And it's all ready for it. They've got fridges inside this big lorry with all your frozen stuff. And it's just quite cool. It's quite great. It works well.
I'll have to look.
I'm sure the other supermarkets have got it too, but it works. Sorry, anyway, we diverse.
That's right. And then the last example that they've talked about in this article is InBev, which are the company that owns Budweiser, Corona, and Beck's.
Unfortunate name, Corona.
Yes. Now, I mean, there's been a lot of reports that as a brand has dropped in popularity, which I think is bizarre. I mean, it's a very nice beer, and just because of the name, why would you stop drinking it? But
yeah.
But they had an app that was explaining a lot about their products, which was for employees actually to be ambassadors. But it works so well, they've now made it open to consumers in lockdown, but they're aiming to ensure younger people understand the complexity of beer, which I think is a very responsible thing to be doing. We've seen a lot of reports on the increase in alcohol consumption since lockdown, so I think that's quite a responsible direction.
It is. Yeah,
and,
it is.
You know, you and I have both worked with sessions in the past, and it is those brands that push out there or find a unique message that actually engages with the mood of the nation, so to speak, that come out the other side much stronger. And I think there's some interesting examples there.
Yeah, there's really good examples. And it dovetails quite nicely into what I was talking about earlier. So, as you know, I attended this virtual congress, which was all about news media. So let me see if I can just share my screen. So this is really about what we are going to do post-COVID. So everybody's worried about, you know, what happens next. How do we actually get around this scenario whereby we're in a nightmare? We've got, you know, customers walking away possibly. Money is going, you know, down the drain possibly. How do we plan for a post-COVID future? And this is really about strategic advice for businesses, whether you're large or small. It was presented at the News Media Conference, but by a lady called Lucy Kung, who is a professor of the Reuters Institute for Journalism in Oxford. Great presenter, great lady. I've known her for a number of years, and she gave this great presentation on you know, what it is we should be doing. So I just love this cartoon, by the way, as well. I found it in private eyes last week, and I'll be glad when all its creativity is over and get back to normal. yeah, right. Yeah. Anyway, but this is advice not just for news media. The point is, it's about, as I say on the slide here, businesses big or small. And what she talked about really was the new strategic landscape in effect, where, you know, consumers have gone digital more so than ever before, and that's all around, you know, whether it's in the area of content, the way we communicate with each other, the way we do business. As you say, more people are buying, you know, stuff online these days than ever before. Yeah. The strong have got stronger, so people who've been doing that for a long time before, they're now reaping the benefits of all the work they've done, where, you know, sometimes it's been frustrating and getting people on board, etc., but now suddenly it's become reality. And I'm thinking again of the scenario whereby we talked about mobile payments. People are suddenly being, you know, using mobile. I mean, there's been loads and loads of work, and I've been involved in some of that, trying to get people to use a mobile more for things like payments. And suddenly everybody is. And I've noticed there's been some adverts on radio recently for brands, big brands like Wix, saying, you know, come into our store, we're very safe, we've got social distancing, and we only take card payments. They're encouraging people now, saying we're only taking cards suddenly, or of course you can use your Apple Pay on your phone. So it's encouraging new ways to do that. And of course, as a contrast to that, the people who have procrastinated in this area are worse off, because their runway suddenly to get things done quickly is much shorter. So what she was saying is, Lucy was saying that the growth is all now about digital and data, not third-party data, because we talked about this before. Third-party data is going to sort of have a different role to play in the future, because of this cookieless future. Our own data and what we're doing and how important it really is. And to use a great phrase of, we raise the mud from the ocean floor, but we need to keep it all going, otherwise the sediment will float back down again. And that's such a good thing. And she ended up with 5 priorities, which I'll come to at the end of these few slides. I've just picked up the highlights from what she talked about, and I'll end with the 5 priorities that she mentioned, again, for businesses, big or small. So the impact that's having on our, our business, we're going to look at it from this point of view. We've got strategic goals as a business. Why do we still exist? What is it that people like about us? What do they come to us for? What value do we add to their lives? What do we actually put in place strategically, which is going to keep that? And how has it changed in this COVID landscape? At the bottom bit, the other blue bit there is, what business models are we going to have to finance that new future? How do we drive new revenue streams? Media, for example, are going into all sorts of new areas now, such as maybe podcasting, e-commerce has become more accelerated. Other new ways of actually driving new revenue. And the bit in the middle, which is the bit that makes that all happen, is, what data are we collecting? How closer are we getting to our customers? How do we know them? What do we know about them? How can we deliver them a product which is what they want, not just what we think they want? What that product actually is and what that product range is, and what technology are we actually engaging to make it all happen? Are we using the right tech? Because tech changes almost by the day these days. And again, we need to review what we're using, and is it delivering what we want to get to the business models we need to get to. So how good ultimately is our product experience, our user experience? Do people like us? Will they come back and spend money with us? And that's about, as she said, it's about, why did our content suddenly matter so much to people? Did it matter to people is a question. If they're still with us, what was it they liked about us before COVID? And what are our new customers, if we've attracted new customers in during this period, what are we doing? So the good example of that was news media, where a lot of people have gone to news media because they trust them. That was a big thing about news media. They're trusted local news media especially, as opposed to social media platforms where there's obviously lots of fake news around. So those new customers have come to news media. What will make them stay? How do we make them a forever customer, if you like? And at the bottom, how do we fill that huge gap, revenue gap, that many people have seen because they've had to close their businesses down? What do we do to get it back on track? And how can we lock in our current customers so they value us going forward to not just before COVID, but how do we keep them engaged in the future? And she wanted to talk about, it is ultimately here a one-off opportunity to accelerate our digital offerings. Organizations are suddenly going to be unfrozen once COVID starts to ease off and we start to get back to some sort of normality. We are in a situation where basically we are unfrozen. We can start to do things differently. And I think the point is that people will expect change from us, both internally and externally. And it goes from everything from, the staff we've got and whether they work from home, whether they don't, and what their roles are in the future and how they adapted for a new landscape. And our customers, what are they expecting from us in the future? And we've got the people still with us, and it's no one's fault. And this is the good thing about it. It shouldn't be a blame culture. There isn't a blame culture because it's sometimes when things go wrong, and we've all seen it in organizations our own, they haven't employed this, try something new, fail and fail fast and move on. There's always been some element of a blame culture of like, oh, who can we point the finger at when that didn't work out right? Well, this thing, it's no one's fault. It's just happened, this virus, which, we're all in this together is the point. So how do we move forward together? And we have the precedent. We in many businesses, and news media is a good example, that we've digitized more in the last 10 weeks than we have in the past 2 years.
That's so true.
Yeah. And we've worked out that this thing about fail and fail fast and move on can work well for us. We've tried new things quickly because we've had to do things quickly in the COVID times.
Yeah.
And we've learned the fast and not necessarily perfect can actually work. We can fail fast and move on, or we can shape something to suit us in this new environment. So the point that this professor was making was, as you rebuild your business, take the chance to remodel your inner organization too, because it has to start there. It's not just about looking for the customers and what they want and delivering it. It's getting our culture right to be able to do that internally first. And she said there's basically 3 jolts to changing, which has adjusted our inner organization. COVID, of course, itself. Digital technology has been an influence and will continue to be. How do we get the right tech, as I said earlier? And Gen Y and Gen Z, what have young people got, and how do we attract younger people to our product range and our offerings? And it's a really good point because they have a different outlook on life than people before. I mentioned that I did a webinar recently for the association, this news association, and it was presented by a Gen Y person, and she was saying that I'm of that group, and I don't like the way you guys treat people in the past, and I want things changing. I want difference, and her view on things we won't go into all today, and we'll maybe come to that next week actually. But she talked about how that age group just want things differently because they've been brought up in a different world where social media, for example, has been a massive part of their lives. And it may not be perfect, but they don't view life perhaps in the same way that you and I might. So what are we doing about those 3 things? But the professor's point was one set of responses, which is focused on leadership and culture, can address all 3. We don't have to have a Gen Y and Gen Z strategy necessarily. We just need to have the right strategy, which can be all encompassing. And she was saying that, so I like this really, if you start from the bottom up here, let's in fact do the way around. Let's start from the top up because culture change needs to start from the top. So from the very top of your organization, you've got a very complex role from the CEO, say, and who now today need a more broader skill set than ever before. Are those CEOs training themselves to get that skill set to be able to talk to people in the mid-tier maybe, who may be much more advanced on things technical and digital than they are themselves? Are they employing the right people to do that and help them with that? If you go down to the top team, which is your board, basically, there needs to be a really cohesive and high-performing board. Do you have the right people at the top table? Have they been there for years that you just need to clear out somewhat and bring in new blood and new thinking, new ideas? When leaders get to that top tier, that board table, what are they doing about driving the future? Are they contributing to the future of the company? Are they of the right mindset? Do they have the right skill sets themselves? All questions which need to be asked. Then you've got the sort of mid-tier. And this was an interesting one in the green little arrow here. So you're saying, what do we do with the C-suite ready talent when there's no seat free at the top table? And I think I mentioned last week that I saw a company recently who said it was a brilliant idea, who have a shadow board. They have a board of young people, maybe the Gen Z and Gen Ys of the company, who are high performers, who have got the right mindset for the future, who could be your next board. And they shadow the board, the main board. They are given the agenda of the main board, and they're giving their opinion that the chairman or chairperson of the board will actually respond to the main board and be sitting on the main board, and they will tell the main board what the shadow board are saying and see how they juxtaposition, I guess, between the 2 boards. It's a really good idea, isn't it? Getting new blood and new talent into the company. Yeah. Plus, you have to be of a certain size company to do this. But if you are a medium to larger size company, you could do that very easily, I would have thought. So it's all about serious leadership skills throughout have got to be in place. They're needed right now, and we need to turn then the strategy into action. And that's all done through the mid-tier. So what are we doing about in terms of getting feedback from that mid-tier? What are we doing about their performance management? Do we need to put new measures in place to measure what they're doing? And then at the lower tier, the everyday workers, what are we doing? A lot of those happen to be Gen Y and Gen Z as they're coming through. But they, as I said earlier, they're demanding different management styles and different leadership styles. Is the culture right to suit all the people in the organization? And then it goes a full circle back to the CEO, because that's where culture change needs to start. And so many times, and I've seen this, that you've got a CEO at the top of a company where they're not the right people. Or they haven't gone about changing themselves to be more embracing of new technologies, new ideas, new thinking, and bringing the right people up through the company who can help them do that. So anyway, it's just a thought. And this professor was saying that what we need is a culture now of high thinking and low ego, a mixture between expertise, people have got clarity in what they, in this midst of uncertainty and this fog and this mud coming from the seafloor, what have we got in terms of people with expertise who can provide strategic clarity, but also equally can provide empathy and give this approachability and this vulnerability thing. So it's almost, she would say, it's a very tricky communications challenge here, but basically it's this line here saying, well, this is what I really need you to do as one of my team, but I could be wrong. I'm willing to be told by people who've got more of an expertise than me on this particular area. And it reminds me what Boris Johnson's tried to do with bringing the scientific advice in, because he's sort of saying, well, I think we should do this as a politician, but I'll take advice from the experts in the scientific world. And it also gives them a bit of a get out as well, doesn't it? It's like, oh, it's almost, without saying the word, it's almost like, well, it's not my fault. I was taking advice from people with the expertise and the knowledge, and I empathize with them. So I think that's what they're trying to do. Sometimes it goes a bit wrong, of course, and we've seen that happen. But that's, I think, the concept behind it. But it is a tricky one, isn't it? It's a tricky one to get right, the tone and everything else. And the Dominic Cummings thing is a good example of that. How to get that completely wrong. But anyway. So she was saying for culture change, there are key stages. So if you start on the left in the light blue, it's about leadership, signaling. It's about making sure people know this has to happen and it has to happen now. So that has to be the first step. A true culture change, as we said a bit earlier, has to be generated from the top down. So the leadership needs to be there from the top. Everyone needs to then have a clear understanding of what that culture is and where you fit into it. So it needs a diagnosis of what the culture is at the moment. Are we doing it right? We need to unfreeze people's minds, was the phrase that was used, that if people have got thoughts and they're just keeping them to themselves because they didn't think that the culture was right where they could voice their opinion, break the shackles, unfreeze the minds and give them a chance to do this. Again, this COVID-19 has enabled us to give this one-up opportunity to shift the culture. Don't waste the opportunity. Never waste a good recession, as the phrase goes.
Oh, it's so true, isn't it? And leadership is all about that facilitating change, inspiring people, but also transparency, so that you are a good communicator, but listen to other people's views.
Yeah, exactly right. And the final bit here was, how do we measure? There may be new ways we need to measure. Good example of that, I think, was, very often from a digital point of view, people would say, oh, we're looking at page views on our website. How many people have come to us? Well, is that a real measure? Are we more so interested in how they're engaging with us when they're there? What type of device are they coming to us from, so we can get our marketing right going forward? There's lots of things to consider. People, I remember, not so much these days, but there's still an element of it. People used to say, oh, we've got 20,000 downloads of our app. Well, that's all very well, but you may well download an app. But I think the figure shows something like we only ever use about half a dozen apps on our phone.
That's right.
Regularly in a month. So if you might download the app but never use it, what's the point in saying you've got 20,000 downloads? How many people are actually using it? And then how are they using it? And that enables you to get a better future. So there may be new ways we can put set of measures in place to replace what we did in the old way and look at it in a new way. And it doesn't mean that everything has to be sort of pulled down and started again. Some things may do, but there may be things we can maybe merge, project we can merge what we would, we never thought about merging the two together before. So I think that's a really, really good thing. And it all links into how we change the culture of the company. And the quote was used, it's a once in a career opportunity for organizations to change. And this is what this post-COVID playbook's all about. And I love this. And it doesn't just apply in a business, but maybe it applies at home too. And this just summed it up for me. It's just nice to be able to spend some quality time with the family together as a family, and everyone's on their devices or looking at something totally different. There's no communication between each other whatsoever. And I think that's so true as well in many cases, isn't it? We sometimes forget how to talk to each other. So the guiding principles in all of this was that we need to seize the moment. We need to firstly do any cleanup work that's overdue. So any stuff we put off, get that out the way with, so we can start to make some steps into changing the culture. Anything that needs to be done, do it. If it can be left, then it probably didn't need doing in the first place. But seize the moment, do it now. And there'll never be a better time just to stop doing some things that need to be stopped. That we always thought we should stop them, but we did them because we've always done them. Or as I said earlier, combine the things that need combining, and maybe that leads to efficiencies. Then look at the cost structure. How do we aim to become more efficient in the long term? And maybe there's ways we can collaborate with the people. Again, just coming back to news media a second, and anyone listening can apply to their own industry. Maybe there's a way that news brands can work together to sell audience. So instead of saying, we are the Daily Mail or we're the Telegraph and we just want to sell you our audience that the Telegraph has, or maybe they could get together and say, well, we have a certain type of audience which is split into certain types of groups, which I know they do a lot of this now anyway, they do that, but it's moving towards this collaboration area whereby you can actually sell an audience which may be overlap between, say, the Mail and the Telegraph and the Guardian and the Mirror, or whatever it might be. Maybe there's ways we can collaborate going forward. Acquisitions, if you can afford to do so, now is probably the time to do it. And I've seen this again in news media. There's been some purchases recently where the big groups have got bigger because it's been now the time to nip in and buy in a vulnerable period. And maybe it's exploiting the vulnerable here, but it is a good time for acquisition if you can do it. And look at what you've done in the past, legacy stuff, all the stuff you've done which you think was great versus the stuff which is really digital, because the future is all about concentrating on data and digital. What are we doing to balance that? And again, news media is doing a lot of that now. What are we doing in print versus what are we doing online and on mobile, etc., and digital? And cut for the future. And it may be that you do have to cut some staff because they're not needed once you've done all the things above. Then the roles aren't needed. And again, it's back to this thing about never wasting a good recession in some ways, maybe, but it's not looking to the past, it's looking to the future and what lean and efficient and agile organization you need to have for the future. So finally, back to the thing I mentioned at the start, coming out stronger on the end of it, there are 5 priorities a professor brought out. And one is, don't miss the opportunity to change the culture. And you do it by stealth. You layer culture goals onto all the key initiatives. So it's not like saying, we're going to knock the house down and start with the foundations again. Maybe you do need to do that. But in the majority, you just need to analyze maybe what your goals were in the future and how a new culture and a new way of thinking can actually bring all those things to the fore in perhaps a different way than you did before. In terms of the top team, their performance, they all need to move it to 5th gear. It is difficult to do, but the returns are immeasurable. You just need to make sure that the right people are in that top team and they are contributing in the way that they need to, and they have the right mindset and right skill sets and right thinking. You need to nail the strategic leadership narrative. Does everyone in the company know what the new goals are, what has to be done and what doesn't need to be done? are we all working, as we said there, you're all in it together. Are we all doing the same stuff as each other? And are we all working for the same common purpose? And very often, of course, that doesn't happen, and it hasn't happened in the past. But maybe it's a time, and it is a time, to do something about that. Triple down, not just double, but triple down on data. It's one of your most important assets, along with your staff, probably the right staff. Getting your data into a situation where you can organize it, you know who your users are, and and that phrase is there, how you can be essential to them, what's going to make them come back, and maybe buy a subscription off you, maybe just keep coming back to you and engaging with you in a different way, and what are you doing about that? And then finally, the fifth point was have a plan on how you want to emerge from all of this. Once COVID is over, what's the plan in terms of where do you want to be as a company? And how do you therefore then get to that place? So start with that bit, where you want to be, and work out what the plan is to get there. And it doesn't sound like rocket science, that, but so many people just don't do that. They just panic because they're in a situation where we need to panic in their mind. So we need to do some knee-jerk stuff. So maybe it's a major relaunch for you, but do what you have to do what you need to have in place. And they're the 5 strategic priorities. I thought the whole thing was really, really good.
Very good.
That was my take from it.
Thought-provoking.
Yeah, and as she said, we raise the mud from the ocean floor, but we need to keep it going, or it all floats back again as a sediment. So there we go. So that was it.
These sorts of times and recession times is a great opportunity to look for the opportunities for the business, but also internally how to restructure and make yourselves more efficient.
So that's it, Pen.
Very good.
So hopefully that's good advice for some people out there.
Yeah, I think that's all we're looking at the moment, isn't it? Assisting businesses with their strategic directions and learning from each other is the only way to move forward. So
so that's it for this week, I think. Next week we've got a special guest.
We have, haven't we?
Yeah, we've got a guy called Tim Crow, who's been on the show before when we were just very linear on audio. But on video next week, we're going to have Tim Crow on, who's one of the world's leading sports sponsorship experts. And with the Premier League, for example, coming back in the next week or so,
to talk to him.
It's a perfect time to talk to him about what's that mean in terms of rights for companies, what's that going to mean for sponsorship of brands going forward. And it should be a really interesting discussion. Excellent.
So if you want to contact us, you can go to the website, which is theukbrandshow.co.uk, or we're on Facebook and we're on Twitter at the UK Brand Show.
We are indeed. So we will see you all next week. I'll see you again next week, Penny.
Yes, I'm looking forward to speaking to our guest.
Indeed. Well, have a good week till then. I'll see you very soon.
Stay safe.
Bye for now.
Bye.